So yes, this is Trailblazer DX 2024. I had 2023 listed there for a very long time. 2024 recap. Um, Thank you for joining us. This is a Salesforce admin group here in Portland, Oregon. My name is Michael Montez. Oops, hold on. Gotta do this. My name is Michael Montez. I am the user group leader for the admin group, along with my counterpart, Allison, who cannot make it today, but is here with us in spirit, as always. But yeah, we are going to, or I'm going to recap kind of my experiences from DX this year, as well as my little learnings, and then we'll kind of just also keep it open for questions, comments, and anybody else who might have attended and have any other feedback. Quick note on upcoming items, what we got planned for the next few weeks. Next week, we're going to do admin tools that people love. So this is, again, a discussion, not a monologue. So if you have an admin tool that you love or that you don't love, please come on in and share it with us. It's also a great way to learn about some of these new tools. I know there's a new tool that I've never heard of that everybody's, well, it's not new. It's an old tool that everybody's used that I never heard of, and now I'm totally into it. But I won't tell you what it is because you have to join the group next week. And then on the 3rd, April 3rd, we're going to have our first in-person meeting of the year, and that's going to be at the Lucky Lab in Southeast Portland. So RSVP, there's the link, salesforcecommunitygroups.com. Fine, go to Portland, and then it's a co-hosted group with several of the Portland area user groups. So pick your favorite and RSVP. And then again, July 10 and 11 this year, Forestlandia will be at the Kennedy School in also Southeast Portland. We do everything in Southeast Portland, apparently. We used to do everything downtown and now we're all in the Southeast. But I guess that tells you where our salaries are if you know the Portland area. So no Northwest, Northeast. Yeah, Northwest. Okay, so let's talk about Trailblazer DX. So kind of like, why would you want to go? Like, why do I go? What's the whole point? What is there versus like other events? There's Connections, there's Dreamforce, there's the Roadshow. Why would you pick Trailblazer DX versus any of those other things? So the reason that I like to go to these is that you get some look ahead into roadmaps, which are great. You get the project managers are all there. They're talking about the things that they're going to be doing for the next release, as well as about a year out of other releases. There's also a lot of hands-on training. There's some pre-training that you can do for the days before, where you actually go into training sessions for certs. So if you wanted to get your platform cert or your dev cert, they have multi-day, multi-hour trainings that you take, and then you take the test right at the end of that. So those are really great as well. There's also a true to the core session there where Parker Harris and a lot of the other product managers are there to just answer any and all questions you may have. They answer them to the best of their ability. They don't always have the best answers. They don't give you the best information as far as usefulness, but they're willing to listen to problems. It's turned into a bit of a, for me, in my opinion, into a bit of a kind of a bit of a roadshow for the people who ask questions. People get in there early, and they want to ask their question. And it's, I don't know, it's good, but it used to be better. I don't know if that makes any sense, but they're good. True to the core though, it's good. And then again, access to actual product managers. You can sit down with some product managers. You can book time with them as a group, like a circle of success. And you can just ask them questions or present problems that you would like them to put on their roadmaps for solutions. So if you haven't, again, it's a great way to get questions answered. So some of the key things I'm going to show here, or at least talk about, are a lot of the roadmaps for the next few months, as well as some sessions that I attended that I found useful, and I think they'd be useful for us admins here in Salesforce. So the first one that I attended was about sandboxes and kind of what's coming up for the sandboxes in the next few releases. And as everybody probably knows, Hyperforce is continuing to be rolled out for your org. So whether your production org or your sandboxes, you're going to be moving to Hyperforce, and that's going to get you faster refreshes, some of these other benefits that you'll see below. But the way to know if you're on a Hyperforce, it says Hyperforce in the if you go to the sandbox section of your production org. But if you go to your if you look at the instance it's on, they used to say NA 123. Now they say things like US, EMEA, APAC, because they're much bigger regions rather than just being North America or other places. So that's one way to know. But one of the things they are going to be doing is when you do a refresh of your sandboxes, they are going to remove the .invalid from all users that are listed as admins or developers. They have a special permission. So that'll allow us admins, as you may have encountered, you refresh a sandbox and you're the only one who can access it until you go in there and reset somebody's username or change their email. And then you have to kind of go through all those pieces where you have to send out the update and the user has to approve of it and then refresh their password and all kinds of stuff. So in this scenario, you just actually, if they're already an admin, they will not have to go through that process and they could just log into the sandbox once it's been refreshed. So that was nice. There's also going to be a new permission that allowed a new permission where you could assign users access only to sandboxes. So if you have a dev team and they don't need access to your production, you create a user record, give them this permission, and they wouldn't have access to production, but they would have access to any sandboxes that are created off of that production environment. Very useful. And then a little bit later in the year, sandboxes are going to be able to be scaled up. So if you're working in a dev sandbox, which is limited to like 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes of data, and you want to graduate that sandbox into a dev pro or a full or a partial, you can actually would able to do that from within the sandbox itself. You can actually upgrade it to a different version with more storage. Just let's say you're doing some dev work and it, whatever, the sandbox becomes like the primary sandbox for development, or the project grows incredibly. You can just up level that sandbox to hold more storage, provided you have the available licenses, of course. So questions on sandboxes? All right. So we've talked about dynamic pages before this year, and here's some of the updates that are coming to dynamic pages. This is the roadmap. So they gave a little demo, kind of, what are we doing? What can you do with dynamic pages? How can AI, and we'll get to AI later, but how can AI help and all these kinds of things. But these are the big takeaways for me from the roadmap. The first one that's supposed to hit in the summer is conditional tabs. So whereas you can show or hide a field or a section based on conditions, now you'll be able to show hide tabs, specifically just a tab, one tab, two tabs, whatever, based on certain conditions. So if it's a certain stage, you show this tab stage. If it's a certain dollar value or something, you can show or hide just the tabs. Whereas before you could show or hide a tab section, but not an individual tab. So that's really going to be helpful, hopefully make your pages more dynamic. People were asking for blank spaces. So there'll be a blank space dropper. You can drop a blank space into your pages. And then the other big thing is when you create a new field, there's currently 4 steps to create a new field. And the 4th step is add the field to page layouts. There'll be a new 5th step, which will be to add that particular field to any dynamic page sections that currently exist for that object. So you can just add them from the wizard as you're going through the steps. You can add those fields to those pages.
Michael, can you add it directly to this section or?
To the dynamic section?
Yeah. Or is it just like how, how page layout just throws it whatever?
Yeah, they didn't show it. They're showing it there in that little screenshot, but they didn't really show a demo of that particularly.
Okay.
My guess is that it's going to default to some location like the page one, so you probably still have to go back in and adjust the thing. But yeah, Christopher, you got a question?
Curious if they mention which categories these will be rolling out to, like enterprise versus standard, or is it going to all of them when it comes out?
I think it's going to all. So if you have if you're using dynamic pages, it'll roll out to you. I think it's going to be GAs for everybody, and not specifically those limitations. So it's just part of the wallpaper for dynamic pages. It'll be just part of the wallpaper. It's my understanding. So. Okay, and then a little later in the year, at the end of the year, conditional field formatting. So if you remember in reports, you could say if an opportunity report, let's say the dollar value was greater than 100,000, as an example, you could make the field green or the text green. But if it was less than 20,000, then you would make it red. That's conditional formatting. You will be able to do that in dynamic pages as well. So you can make something bold, red, a bigger size, stuff like that. So you'll have conditional formatting within fields, dynamic fields. And there's a new dynamic panel. So if you use the panel at the top, now you can show hide fields based on conditions as well. So you can squeeze in 15 fields up there. Like right now, you can only put 7. It'll show 7, and it'll show 7 no matter what. It'll the same 7 all the time. Now you could have 7, but you would only show 3 if these are the conditions, and these 4, these are the conditions, things like that. So again, as the data is needed, it can be shown accordingly for the user, so that the use case is more dynamic and useful for the user. So looking forward to that. We have a lot of dynamic needs for the header for the highlights panel. So looking forward to that. I wish it was a little sooner, but it's not. So the second roadmap that I went to that we've talked about a lot here is kind of automation. And I'm not gonna go deep into this one because some of these sessions are available in Salesforce Plus, and they're relatively short. They're like 20 minutes, and they go into a little bit deeper about some of these roadmap items. But from an automation standpoint, there is going to be an option for you to leverage AI to start generating flows. And that's going to be the first kind of release. That's going to be this coming release. And then that's going to just grow as the releases continue. So like the first demo example they show is just kind of like, I need a flow that sends a notification to the opportunity team member when the deal is closed won. Like real kind of simple flow, and it built out the little elements for you and kind of presented it to you. And then you can go forward and test it and activate and all those kinds of things. But then as things get more and more into the future, you can do a lot more creative things. Like I need a formula that tells me this, that then uses the logic to enter the flow, to do these things, to do this thing. And you can just write it out in like plain language, and then you can build onto it through the prompt builder, and the flow will just kind of grow as you talk to it, as you talk to the system. So that's later, but so it's interesting. A lot of the examples again were I would say it's new. It's going to be most beneficial for people who are not too flow heavy. They're not using a lot of flows right now, or they're just getting started. If you're just getting started with flows, it's going to be a very, very helpful tool. If you've been using flows for a while, it'll still be helpful, I'm sure, but I could, I don't want to say I could do it faster, but I could probably have an example somewhere that I've done it and I'll clone that or something like that. I don't know, but it's coming and that's cool. Great. Good for that. The other thing that's kind of cool is the builder is getting a lot of love. So if you know the flow builder, how it works now, they're adding a lot more user interface elements to make it easier for everybody to understand what they're looking at. So as an example, they're restructuring or reordering where the items fall within the resource picker. So if you look at the the resource picker on the flows, they're going to be categorized and organized a little bit differently. They're going to be a little more structured based on the resources coming from, the action that it might be taking, things like that. So a lot less hunting for things, and it should be more easy to access some of those resources there. What else did I want to cover on this particular one? Well, let me just open it up for questions on this particular slide if anybody has any. But RPA is RPA scheduling is, what is it? Robotic process automation, RPA, and that's just like flows that run in the background. So that's going to be rolling out shortly. But anyway, I'll get past this slide because there's plenty more here. There's going to be a new element, so it's called transformations. So I don't know if anybody's ever worked with Google Wave, or not Google Wave, Salesforce Wave, the prior version of CRM Analytics, which is part of Tableau, which is part of other things. But if you do any kind of Tableau or Wave or any of those other items where you're doing data manipulations, you could do these data manipulations. Now you'll be able to actually do some of these types of data manipulations within flows and use the outputs for your, to do data updates within your flows. So there's a whole new element coming called transformations, and they allow you to transform the data according to your inputs and outputs, sort of the things you need. So that's coming soon. And then there's the roadmap for transformations there you see. So it's going to be real simple stuff early, and again, as it gets longer out, the abilities become more and more complex, and the use cases become more complex, and the solutions are then there for you. But again, I urge you to watch the video on Salesforce Plus to get some more examples of what they're doing there, or what's coming with that transformations. And then the last part of flows is human task, aka screen flows. So yeah, that's what they're going to call it, human task. So if you look into that, but more repeaters coming. So the repeaters were introduced in the last release, and then more information, more repeatable screen flows are coming in 24. There's this action builder. Again, I don't do the beta stuff too often, so I don't pay attention as much to that. But they're going to break up the address fields in the screen flows. So if you want to do screen flow with addresses, you can actually add individual address components versus the entire address block. What else? Yeah. Transform is going to get rolled into the transform object, get rolled into the screen flows as well. So you can take data in from the user, process the data through a transform, and then output it, either save it to your record or display the information. And then way beyond, in winter beyond, is going to be custom headers and a progress indicator that's going to be out of the box, where you can kind of show how far the user is within a flow to kind of get to that. If you're ever taking a survey and you take a couple questions and then you're like, oh, I'm 50% of the way through this survey, I'll keep going. Similar to that, a progress indicator of how far along the process a user is in a screen flow, so they just have a general idea of where they are at. Questions before the next section? Comments, concerns? Okay. So the last one that was real has been talked about is kind of user management. and also known as profiles, permission sets, and other things. So one of the key things that I took away from this particular session was that Salesforce has been, when it comes to setup, they essentially had to rebuild all of the the foundation of the house, to put in the new plumbing and put in new electrical, and that's what they've been doing with and they start with user management. So they're starting with user management. They're rebuilding all the pieces that are functional from the ground up. So they've restructured everything. So before, the example they gave was they would go in and try to fix something, and the way that the code was written on this particular object, let's say it was permission sets, was completely different and unique from the way that the profile code set was written. So they needed to find a way to normalize both code sets so that they're standardized, and now they can make these changes across the board that are universal. And you'll kind of see what's happening in the next slide or two, but this are actually on this slide, which is user access policy summaries. So they're going to roll out a ton of summary information because it's the new object or the new piece that they were able to get done that allows you to see like what access does this permission set give to X, right? So if I have a permission set, what are the things that this thing is granting? What's the CRUD for this object, this object, this object? What are the public groups involved? What are custom settings involved? All these kinds of, you get a summary of what those things are. And that summary also carries over to permission sets, permission set groups, queues, individual users, and then you'll also be able to compare users one-to-one. This user A versus this user B, what's the difference between those two users? Just right there on the thing. You don't have to do any third-party tools to see it, stuff like that. But the big one here that I'm showing on the screen for is user access policies. So when you create a new user, you can set up with essentially a flow. If the user is of a type systems administrator, then give this user these 3 permission sets, this permission set group, add them to this group, and put them in this queue. You can set up that policy. And then whenever you create that user and that condition is true, those things happen automatically in the background, and that user is, instead of creating the user and then adding all the pieces, you create the user and then it processes, and all the pieces are part of that user's record. So you can create up to 200 user access policy rules, and that'll be available in the next release. So very cool. This is the slide I wanted to show. Sorry, I thought I was showing this, but this is kind of this roadmap for these users, what's coming for them. So again, I recommend watching the video. This is a shorter one, and they go through a lot of these elements and what they really mean. But again, the big takeaway is they're restructuring the entire setup backend. And so once they kind of start rolling these things out, these changes are going to come fast and furious and should make our lives a lot easier as far as user access and user permissioning and setting people up and all those kinds of things. So questions, thoughts? Hand raising? All right.
I do have one comment, is that there's focusing on the user management aspect of it, but the framework that they're building is going to be applied to all of setup eventually. So
yeah. Yeah, so those summaries that you see under user management, those will eventually roll into other like object management and validation rules and things like that. They'll slowly roll out to all these other pieces, and that's just like a summary space. But there's also coming soon the ability to like look at permission sets, let's say, and in that summary, it'll show you the CRUD for the various objects, but then you can actually edit them from within that window and change CRUD for objects of a specific permission set. And that again that's just kind of infrastructurally updating, and then that'll roll into other pieces of setup like Nick was saying there. So really cool that they're doing that, but Long time coming, for sure. Okay, let's talk about AI. This is going to take your job and you will have nothing to do for the rest of your life. So that's great. That's the big takeaway. It's only a matter of time before we're all replaced by robots. So if you want to get into development, now's the time to get into development, because only development will save your soul. Okay, actually, the reality is there's some cool stuff coming for admin specifically. One of the biggest things that I got. So first of all, go to sforce.co, Einstein for admins, and there's a trailhead there where you go in and build a prompt and some other cool stuff. And then Salesforce Plus, again, there is a very cool session about formula builder for AI for formulas. And what's coming soon is, and this I found very interesting. Hopefully it rolls out sooner rather than later. So if you're in an org and you're looking at a formula that you've inherited, could be through a validation rule, could be through a formula field. You can actually on the prompt side, there'll be a little screen on the side of the formula of the let's just say it's a validation rule with a big hairy formula. On the little side window, you can say, tell me what this formula is doing. And it'll break down the pieces of the formula. This formula is looking at this field and looking for this value. Or it could say, this formula is going to display 365 days from today, the number of work days available in that time period. So let's say the number is 300, right? There's 60 weekend days plus holidays, whatever. It's just going to tell you what the formula is doing. That's the first kind of milestone. Is I look at a thing and say, what is this formula doing? So if you inherit an org or you inherit somebody's work, you could say, what is this thing doing? And it'll tell you in simple language what's happening. And then later on, as it gets better and better and rolls out, you can actually ask it to help you write a formula, or you can ask it, what is this formula doing? And it'll actually make suggestions to how it can do something else. Or there's another option where you write a formula and you get an error, it doesn't work, and you can say, why is my formula not working? It'll tell you, this formula is not working because of these things. Do you want me to fix these things for you? And it'll update the formula to include that. So it'll read a formula for you, it'll write a formula for you, and it can troubleshoot a formula for you. And that's the Einstein for formulas. So again, that there is no Salesforce Plus session active currently for that one, but it's supposed to be coming shortly. So I couldn't find that. I had to remember that from my notes. But that was really cool. There are sessions on prompt builder and prompt templates where you can leverage AI for the end user. It's a little bit interesting on how it works, because you have to write all the stuff behind the scenes. And then the user has on the front end has like a little checkbox or a little magic wand, and they press the magic wand, and then the AI processes in the background and then presents the results to the user. So as an example, you would write a prompt in a prompt builder that says, roll up the cases for this account whenever the user asks for those things. You know, what are my top 5 cases, and what's the severity, and when was the last time that they were touched? And then you kind of write that in a prompt builder, a prompt template, and then you put that into the page layout. And then when the user is using the product, let's say they're on the case object, there's a little field there for AI case prompt. They actually click the little magic wand, and it processes that request as you wrote it and returns the results and says, this account has 15 open cases and 5 of them are severe, and the last time they were reached out to was 3 days ago. So it's interesting. I couldn't wrap my head around it too well about how useful it was, but it's interesting. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that, or if they had other experiences with these prompt builders and templates and the AI user interface AI, but interesting. Okay, so the last section that I wanted to touch on is well architected. So the well architected team has been refreshed, and now a lot of the well architected elements that they share are also going to be refreshed. So if you've used any of the decision guides or the pattern, anti-pattern, or the diagrams, they're going to get refreshed in the next few weeks. New guides are coming out. There's definitely a guide for AI. There's guides for all kinds of stuff. But if you, as an admin, definitely would check out the website or this particular subsite for architects and just absorb some of this information, because it can be very helpful when you're thinking about building new pieces or just making adjustments or overhauls to some of your existing elements or things like that. They're really helpful guides and ways of thinking about data within Salesforce. So it's a really useful section of the Salesforce ecosystem. So definitely recommend that. Here are the resources that I've got for you. Salesforce admin, architects, and the Trailblazer videos on Salesforce Plus are all available. The interesting thing about the Salesforce Plus videos to me is you have to go to the event. So you go to Salesforce Plus, then you click event, and then all the videos, none of the videos are on the screen. There's no videos there. There's like a few videos of like the keynote. Click on the little filters icon over in the corner, which I've highlighted there, and that will show all the videos that are available to you. So it's a little bit, I feel like it's hidden, but I don't know, whatever. I'm thinking maybe I'm stuck in the YouTube mindset, but I was expecting to see all the videos kind of up front and center, but they're all kind of hidden away under the filters tab, but they're all there. All right. Finally, yeah. Also, there's a concert, and you get to have lunch, and you get to have dinner. So go to the concert and hang out with giant stuffed animals. That's kind of weird. They were very hyper this year, so I don't know if anybody cares. But yeah, that's what I've got for now. So let's chat. What else? Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? I can leave this slide up, or I can go to the screens. But yeah, let's hear what you got. Any thoughts?
I know. I mean, it's a little more minor, and it's not technically on the roadmap right now. There's not it's not tied to a specific release, but I know it's coming within the next year or so. Is that Lightning is going to get a refreshed, kind of modernize the design of Lightning. I saw a preview of it, and it looks pretty good. So
like the Lightning web design.
Yeah, like Lightning design system.
Oh, okay, nice. That was another session I did attend, which was not that particular one, but I mean one where they talked about how to leverage the Lightning web component, design component, in your screen flows. That was really useful. So again, that was not online, but you can. We might have a whole session on that one actually, because that one was pretty cool, and I'm definitely going to be making some changes to my screen flows to leverage the underlying CSS, if you will, of all the things.
Yeah, I'm actually giving my company a demo of that tomorrow as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Question? Chris? Dan? Bob? Bobby? Michelle? Michael? Angela? No questions.
Are you going to have the slides available?
Say again?
Are you going to have the slides available after the call?
Yes, sir. Slides will go out as well. Slide and recordings will go out and as well from at the session, as well as the invitation for next week's conversation, office hour, whatever you want to call it.
Right on.
No questions from me. Just really looking forward to that formula interpreter that you were talking about. That one, I've seen some really. It just looks like a string of random ASCII on there before, and it's nice to know that at least somebody will be able to have a guess at that. I'll be very curious to see how well it works. I mean, the general GPT stuff are actually pretty close. You can give it, some general guidelines or something a little more specific, and it'll give you a fairly good, like 95% usable formula. So I'll be curious to see how well they've trained it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't do a lot. Personally, I don't do a lot of AI stuff. Like I've asked some of these AI tools questions on, like I'm taking a vacation this year and I want to go here. What places should I check out? Like I ask it a lot of that, but then I've seen other people who are saying, well, if you really know how to write a prompt and you really understand if you understand how it thinks, you can write it in like ChatGPT or Copilot, and you'll get everything that you could possibly get out of, the world's knowledge, if you will, about this thing. And included in that is like, the Salesforce data set or the Salesforce, like the release notes, the help guides, all the stuff that's on Salesforce.com and docs.salesforce.com, developers, that's all kind of been ingested, right? They kind of gave it over. So if you know how to write a prompt in Copilot or write it in ChatGPT, you'll get some really good results. This is that, but with more guardrails, right? With more, only look at these types of resources when you're giving me my answers, stuff like that. So it's all there.
Yeah, I just finished up actually last night, Martin Good's AI Force training, and one of the things that he has is a GPT that's specifically trained for Salesforce, and he's got a drop-down list where you can have it's a specific interaction for formulas, a separate specific interaction for SOCOL, etc. So I think it was an early version of something like what they're rolling out internally from Salesforce. So the fact that was able to have that up, I mean, a year ago, and probably pretty close, within the 90% range of what Salesforce supposedly is bringing out. But I've heard odd things about Copilot, and mind you, some of it's on Reddit, so I take it with a grain of salt. But that even using the trained AIs, there's no way that they're replacing our professional knowledge anytime soon, because you have to be an informed user to get useful results from the AI. I've had that same experience that you have going into ChatGPT and asking a general question. You get a really general answer, but then having to use either a specific kind of formatting or knowing that, sort of like inside baseball, what the tools are, what the vocabulary is, the terminology, and you use it so that the GPT can actually go in and access that information that is appropriate. It won't go for it without that sort of inside information. So, we're it definitely is more of an assistant for the near, at least for the next couple of years.
Definitely no. Yeah, I mean, I think prompt, again, speaking very high level, very amateur experience with this, what am I trying to say? You are best to learn prompt building and understanding how these tools work and how to ask it questions so that you can get good answers. Like Dan is saying, a bunch of people who don't know a lot about something, you have to be very specific in your questions and ask it very specifically, and then you have to be able to vet the answers that it gives you so you know that they're right or way off. So it's interesting. Again, a lot of examples that I saw, I don't know, Nick, if you saw some examples as well, but a lot of the examples I saw were very, very, I would say almost simplistic examples of like, build me a report that shows me, lifetime value. It's like, there's a couple formulas out there for that, like lifetime value. You can easily do that with a Google search, but here you're using this other tool. But yeah. Nick, thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of the use cases they had were very simple. Of like, show me like my top accounts closing. I was like, these are just list views.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the report in a window.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Angela, I did not see anything about experience sites, so I don't know. And I don't see anything on Salesforce Plus about it. Just any in there with no presentations on it about experience sites or a roadmap for Experience Cloud. I don't have anything on there, unfortunately. Christopher, you have some?
I totally spaced on it. Can't remember what it was.
All right.
Never mind.
All right. Well, if you get a chance to go to DX, definitely take advantage. There are some. It is a little bit deeper than Dreamforce for sure. Dreamforce can be very high level, very rah, but this is going to be a little bit more in depth. And if you can go to the training sessions or you want to take a test, take some of those training sessions on the 2 or 3 days before. Definitely. And of course, networking is huge. It's a big deal. And you can meet a lot of great people. Like I ran into Nick a couple times. So,
and and just being able to meet product owners and get your questions answered directly, and then somewhat influence roadmaps as well. Obviously, they have the idea exchange, and that's where they primarily prioritize these projects. But it is, you can get in their ear a bit, plant seeds. So,
like I was able to, I met a couple times, ran into, just cross paths with some of the Flow team, and I just said, hey, is it possible for us to get, as users, to get more examples on how to use some of these elements? Because if you go to some of those elements, you get like one example, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's only example that you get. This is how you would use this element. But there's obviously more ways to use it that people have thought of than just such. So they told me that they're going to work on getting more examples available for users and use cases and things like that. So we'll see if that happens. But I'm sure it's a question many people have. But all right, well, we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you next week. And bring your favorite tools and tricks and tips and all that kind of good stuff. And we'll talk then. Thank you all. See you later.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.